It is 4 p.m., 4 minutes past 3, sorry. 4 minutes past 3 here in Nairobi. A very good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and watching us this day. It is the 8th of February 2023, even as we continue to received the rising numbers after that deadly earthquake that happened. The borders between Turkey and Syria, over 10,000 people have been reported dead so far. There are still some bodies that are still being, removed from the rubble, and there's no telling at the end of it how the numbers, what numbers would have had of the people who would have passed by then. But our condolences and well wishes goes to the people of Turkey and, of course, Syria. Now, here's the latest news from across the continent of Africa. We start with Nigeria, and Nigeria's Supreme Court has temporarily suspended Friday's deadline to stop using old banknotes, which had caused a cash crisis in the country. Many banks have not heard enough of the new Naira notes, leading to desperate and chaotic scenes as people try to get their hands on them. Videos were shared of people stripping in banks and protests and fights at ATMs. The chaos led to concern that it could affect this month's election, as many Nigerians do not have the banknotes. The central bank said the currency redesign would help it tackle inflation, which is currently running at about 21%. The bank said 80% of the notes currently in circulation were being held outside financial institutions. It hoped the redesign would bring some of that money being hoarded by individuals and companies back into the financial system and to stop prices from rising so quickly. The case, which was brought by the northern states of Kaduna, Kogi and Zamfara, has been adjourned to the 15th of February. The media regulator in Democratic Republic of Congo has ordered the local office of satellite television provider Canal Plus to remove Rwandan channels from its bouquet airing in the country. The suspension will run for a period of 90 days and could potentially be renewed depending on circumstances. The regulator, as CSAR RDC, said in a statement. Kinshasa accuses Rwandan channels of inciting civil disobedience among many allegations, the Chronicle site has reported. Canal Plus Bouquet has about 10 Rwandan TV channels, including Rwandan state broadcaster RBA, that air news and commentary programs about the ongoing war in eastern DRC. The news site adds DRC, the US and UN experts accused Rwanda of backing M23 rebel group in the eastern part of the country. Rwanda has denied this and blames the Congolese government for the unrest in the mineral-rich eastern DRC. Tunisian President Kais Saied has fired country's Foreign Minister Othman Jerandi. The presidency has announced the president appointed Nabi Anmar, Tunisia's ambassador to the European Union, to replace Mr. Jerandi. He did not give a reason for Mr. Gerandi's dismissal. Mr. Gerandi is the fourth minister to lose his position this year, with the trade, agriculture and education ministers having already been replaced. President Saied carried out a series of measures in 2021 to enhance the power of the presidency at the expense of parliament and the judiciary. Opposition parties boycotted the 2022 parliamentary elections, accusing the president of staging a coup after shutting parliament in 2021 and giving himself almost unlimited executive powers. And then South African lawmakers have scrapped a proposed sponsorship deal with Premier League side Tottenham Hotspur. That sparked public uproar after details were leaked in the media. The country's official tourism board had conditionally approved the proposed 3-year deal worth 900 million South African rand and close to a million. Worth 900 million South African rand. But critics said the amount could be better utilized in a country battling daily power blackouts, water shortages and significant unemployment. On Tuesday, Parliament's Tourism Committee called for the deal to be stopped immediately. This was after Tourism Minister Lindiwe Sisulu had told it that she had no knowledge of the proposed deal. And the United Nations has called for an investigation into violence in the self-declared Republic of Somaliland, where at least 50 people have been killed. 2 days of fighting between regional government troops and local militias. Medics in the city of Las Anod said they are struggling to cope with the number of casualties. The city is in an area which is also claimed by the Somali region of Puntland. The authorities there have denied that troops from Puntland are fighting alongside local militias. The president of Somalia, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, has called for all sides to hold talks to end the conflict. Somaliland broke away from Somalia in 1991 but has not been internationally recognized. And then we go back to the DRC. 3 protesters were killed on Tuesday during an attack on a UN convoy in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, the UN said in a statement. The UN's mission in the country, MONUSCO, said it deployed the deaths during the attack in Munigi, North Kivu province. It said the protesters had forced the convoy to stop and proceeded to set 4 trucks on fire. The victims died while peacekeepers, accompanied by Congolese soldiers, tried to protect the convoy. According to a statement, rebels have recently captured large territories of the volatile province, sparking public anger against the UN and the East African Regional Force. Recent fighting has killed hundreds of people and displaced thousands more. We go to Rwanda, where a court there has fined a man $900 after he pleaded guilty of involuntary manslaughter over the death of a journalist who was critical of the government. John Williams Ntwali was killed last month when a speeding vehicle hit the motorcycle to which he was a passenger. The authorities said it was a traffic accident. All right. Now, rights groups, as I'm reading this, my mind is also just analyzing the story at the same time. I need to focus. Now, rights groups have called for an independent investigation describing his death as suspicious, and Human Rights Watch said Mr. Ntwali had been regularly threatened and attacked in pro-government media for his investigative reporting. The trial was not open to the public, but some journalists were invited to witness the reading of the verdict. That is very interesting. And he dared to do investigative journalism in Rwanda. All right, I'll come back to this item. Let's just move on to Gambia. And President Adama Barrow has said that a special court will have to be formed to try people named in an inquiry report looked into crimes committed under former President Yahya Jammeh. Gambia's 1997 constitution does not have provisions specifically prescribed to prosecute crimes such as torture, enforced disappearance, and crimes against humanity. The Truth and Reconciliation and Reparations Commission found that some 250 people were murdered during Mr. Jammeh's rule between July 1994 and January 2017, responding to critics who alleged that he was shielding Mr. Jammeh and his alleged accomplices. President Barrow said his government was working with relevant stakeholders and partners to establish a prosecution system to impartially try those accused of crimes. Speaking at a meeting between the executive and members of the legal profession, Saliu Tal, the president of the Gambian Bar Association, said Mr. Barrow's government was to blame for the legal crisis. Okay. And then we go to Senegal, and a group of Senegalese organizations from the civil society and citizens filed on Monday a complaint with the Dakar court to ask the courts to take up a COVID-19 mismanagement case. The move follows the publication of a report by the Court of Auditors at the end of December, which pinned the management of COVID response funds. In 2020 and 2021, the audit of the Court of Accounts of Senegal studied the expenditures made in 2020 and 2021, and on the response fund against the effects of COVID-19, the budget amounted to more than 740 billion CFA francs. And that is equivalent to 1.1 billion euros, financed by donors and the state, according to this report published on the website of the audit institution attached to the presidency. According to RFI journalists, the complaint demanding the opening of a judicial investigation targeting the people mentioned in the report of the Court of Auditors. That 1.1 billion euros was mismanaged. In short, that is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. Heading back to DRC again, a massacre committed at the end of November in 2 localities in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo left 171 civilians dead. The UN Human Rights Office in the country said on Tuesday, revising to up a previous toll. A preliminary UN investigation had established in December a death toll of 131, while the Kinshasa authorities had mentioned about 300 people had died in the massacre. In its annual report published on Tuesday, the United Nations Joint Human Rights Office, UNJHRO, documented cases of summary execution of at least 171 people in the localities of Bambo and Kishishe between 21st and November 30th, 2022 in the province of North Kivu. For its part, the American NGO Human Rights Watch said in a report on Monday that M23 rebels summarily killed at least 22 civilians in Kishishe following clashes with local militias. In its report, UNJHRO knows that during the year 2022, the situation in North Kivu was largely impacted by the resurgence of the M23 group, and in 2022, the UNJHRO documented 5,969 human rights violations and abuses across the country, a decrease of 15% compared to previous year. About 85% of the documented cases of human rights violations and abuses were recorded in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo's provinces, North Kivu, South Kivu, Ituri, and Tanganyika. And in 60% of the documented cases, armed groups are said to be responsible. We go to Uganda, and the country has said it will not renew the mandate of the United Nations Human Rights Office in the East African country, citing the development of its own sufficient capacity to monitor rights compliance. I love this. Now, in a letter by Uganda's Foreign Affairs Minister sent to Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, on February 3rd, and seen by news agencies on Wednesday, the ministry noted progress Uganda has made in developing a domestic capacity to monitor rights as the main reason for its decision. Now, Uganda country office spokesperson, the OHCHR's Uganda country spokesperson, Bernard Amwine, told Reuters he had no comment. President Yoweri Museveni's government has over the years been criticized by the opposition, human rights activists, and Western countries for various rights violations, including torture, illegal detentions, and extrajudicial killings of opponents and critics. Officials have denied almost all of the accusations and said all security forces implicated in rights abuses have been duly punished. Museveni, who is 78 years old, who came to power after a 5-year guerrilla war, has ruled Uganda since 1986, and the opposition and critics have accused him of grooming his son, a general in the country's military, to take over from him. Museveni has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. The OHCHR Ugandan office was established in 2006 and was initially allowed to focus only on human rights issues, conflict-plagued areas in Uganda's north and northeast. According to Uganda's government, it was later allowed to cover the rest of the country. In the letter, the ministry said the government had since gained enough commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights, and that there was peace throughout the country, coupled with strong national human rights institutions and a very vibrant civil society. They're describing Uganda, remember? And Uganda's next election, which is set to be in 2026, and Museveni is widely expected to seek another term, although he has not indicated if he will be standing. Let's just move swiftly to Cameroon. And authorities in Cameroon say 27 people, including senior police officers and a well-known media mogul, have been detained in connection with the killing last month of popular journalist Martinez Zogo. Journalists in Cameroon say they are increasingly receiving death threats and experiencing harassment. The media professionals called for justice and protections after 2 journalists who reported on corruption were found dead in the capital in 2 weeks. The mutilated body of radio host Zogo was found on January 22nd in Yaoundé, 5 days after he was abducted. On February 2nd, Jean-Jacques Olabibi, a Catholic priest and radio host, was also found dead in the capital. 2 days earlier, Bibi, who had called for justice for Zogo, told Cameroon's Galaxy FM radio he was receiving regular death threats that he suspected were from authorities. The president of the Cameroon Journalist Trade Union, Marion Obam, told local media on Tuesday at a press conference in Douala that Cameroonian journalists will wear dark clothes every Wednesday to show they want all suspected killers of journalists arrested and brought to justice. She said in the past 4 years, 4 journalists have either been killed or have died in suspicious circumstances, while at least 20 experienced severe violations in their rights. The president's office on Friday said more than 20 people had been detained over Zogo's killing, including senior police intelligence officers. The statement did not elaborate, and officials declined requests for comment. We go to Tunisia, or rather we go back to Tunisia, and Tunisia has joined the long list of countries that are sending aid to the quake-hit Turkey and Syria. President Kais Saied has ordered humanitarian aid for countries, including over 15 tons of blankets and food after they were hit on Monday by a 7.8 magnitude earthquake, which killed and injured thousands of people. Now, dozens of nations, including the United States, China and the Gulf states, have pledged to help, and such terms as well as relief supplies have begun to arrive by air. A winter storm has compounded the misery of those rendering misery by rendering many roads, and some of them damaged by the quake almost impassable, resulting in traffic jams that stretch for kilometers in some regions. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has declared a 3-month state of emergency in 10 southeastern provinces. The World Health Organization has warned that up to 23 million people could be affected by the massive earthquake and urged nations to rush help to the disaster zone. And then we go, or rather we end from Namibia. The President Hage Geingob has expressed his dismay that children in Namibia around the country, or rather children in Namibia, are learning under trees. In the first cabinet session of the year on Tuesday, he was speaking about education and told his ministers that he had witnessed a phenomenon himself. Okay? He has never seen anything like this. Now, the president questioned why teachers could not construct the teachers to stop teaching and construct makeshift structures to shield the children from the rain and other weather elements instead of helplessly waiting on the government to construct classrooms. He cited, it's not funny, but he cited an example in the past of when he had given advice to a staff member at a school that did not have a kitchen. And this is what the president recalls as telling this teacher: yes, while you're waiting for the government, why don't you put up one pole over here and another pole over there, and then another pole down the other side and the other one behind here, and put on what they call in their indigenous language blikkies, which is supposed to mean tins. Yeah, and you just put a tin there and voila, you have a kitchen. But his comments have drawn ire from some who say the 81-year-old president is divorced from the hardships many face in Namibia. Now, according to the Namibian newspaper, leader of the official opposition, Makendri Venani, described the president as clueless. It also reported a teachers' union official pointing out that teachers were already under pressure and infrastructure was falling out. And that is the end of our news this afternoon from across the continent of Africa. I don't even know where to begin. I know I've been perhaps laughing and smiling over some of these news items. It's not that it's funny, it's just I cannot even believe what reading to you and some of the things that are happening in these countries. Of course, the president of Namibia is clueless. I would support the sentiment of one of these opposition officials. He is absolutely clueless. He's saying he has never seen. I've seen them here in Kenya sometimes, in those remote areas, and I've always had a problem with that because with devolution, those are some of the things that was supposed to be sorted out, like why are we still having children learning under makeshifts? You can't convince me that there's a proper reason for that to happen. So now in Namibia, and I'm sure spread across other countries in the continent, the president spotted, I guess he was watching news, because if he didn't even know this happens, that means he doesn't travel across the country, across Namibia, and he's really aloof and in touch with what is happening, for him to even think that this is he termed this as a phenomenon, that children are learning under trees. We've seen them in South Sudan, like I've said, even in Kenya. It's embarrassing. There are some parts in this, remote parts in this country, because of maybe some communal wars or things like that, or just poor leadership in those local areas, the local governments and all that. We still have children studying under very tough conditions, and we've seen them spread across, even in Nigeria, other places. It's really not a phenomenon. But according to President Hage of Namibia, he's saying, oh my God, I've never witnessed anything like this. This is like, what is happening? And you know, this is somebody who has been in power since 2015. Yes, President Hage has been in power since 2015. And you would imagine, since 2015 to now, this is somebody who really has good understanding of what is happening in Namibia, and especially when it comes to some of these things that touches on his delivery as a president as far as the public is concerned, like public education, like public health, like public transport, like things like that. You would expect that a president understand, fine, this is what we've been able to do, this is how much the country has been able to address this issue and take care of this and respond to this, but we're still having some of these things or challenges that we still need to address. And there are perhaps some remote areas in Namibia that, you know, the issue of education has to be addressed, access to education, and then do these children have proper infrastructure for their schools, and do they have enough staff? You would think that is something that he knows. And the reason why I was chuckling while reading this story is because he is, and I didn't find it funny, he is the president, he is the head of state, been there since 2015. If it was somebody else who came from the Western countries, now that will be a phenomenon for them, because you know, a place like Switzerland, a place like Germany, a place like the UK, a place, you know, even the US, and they came and they make such a statement, I would understand. This is an African leader. This is a person who struggled, you know, through becoming, fighting apartheid, grew up in poverty, and so, but now he's been in power for a very long time, since 2015, and he's quite aloof and out of touch. And some of these suggestions he's making sounds like those suggestions sometimes I hear from Nigerian senators when they're trying to find a solution for their runaway insecurity. And he's saying that one time he, you know, when he went to a school, and this school did not have a kitchen, so he advised the teachers on what to do. You put one stick there, the other there, and all that, and then you make up and you have a makeshift kitchen. Why should you be having a makeshift kitchen in Namibia in the 21st century? Why can't the government prioritize in improving the conditions of the public schools? And this is what I have a problem with, because education is critical for any country that is developed in the world. If you look at the public education sector, you go to countries like in Europe, majority of these countries, you'll find that nobody is willing to take their children to the private schools, because the public schools are so good and the quality there is so good that if you take your child to a private school in a country like Germany, people look at you like, what's really wrong with your child? Because the public schools are working so well, and they offer quality, and they are quality themselves. And what I have a problem with our leaders, and sometimes how they behave and talk as if they're really completely out of touch with the reality of the people they represent, like in the case of this Namibian president, is because their own children don't even study in these countries. And when they're sick, they don't even seek for medical services in their countries. And this has made them completely be out of touch with the situations of these public institutions that are very critical in their countries. And this is the case. So I'm not really surprised that he finds children learning under trees a phenomenon. To him, it's because I'm sure if I Googled now and checked where his children are, he's at his age, he's 81, so I'm sure he has grown children. So they might not even be in Namibia, or if they are, they're not living like the commoners there in Namibia. So this out of tune aloofness that is exhibited by our leaders across the continent, I think it is the main problem. We elect people who are completely out of touch. He does not know. So if you're waiting for such a person to come and address the issue of public education, then you're going to wait for a very long time, because he does not even know. He does not even know what goes on in there. I don't know when he meets up with his cabinet and he's updated on what is happening. I don't know what they tell him. I don't know if they tell him they've built schools across the country or everything is okay. I don't know, because you get the report and then you assess, and then you're able to see in your next planning after the next budget, how can we prioritize while we give this money to the education sector. What is it supposed to do? How can we improve on the infrastructure, and what else can we, but it is a phenomenon. This is just something else. Now, Uganda has said that it is closing the office of, and I will not even dwell on this story for a long time, the office of the United Nations High Commissioner of Human Rights. Yes, so Uganda is saying it will not renew the mandate of this office in the East African country, in Uganda, because Uganda is saying now that the country has developed its own sufficient capacity to monitor human rights compliance. Now this is amazing. Okay, so they're saying once your term has ended and the period to which we agreed has ended, we might need you to just fold up and be gone. And I think the same office, you remember President Pierre Nkurunziza of Burundi also, it is the same office that he closed in Burundi. So it's very suspect. I know we have this office in Kenya, and I don't think even the current president would even find a need to close such an office, because why would you? So Uganda is saying they've really worked on their mechanisms to monitor and to have rights compliance. So they've been working on that, and they're doing so well. So because of that, they shall not be needing the Office of the United Nations Human Rights in their country. Now, President Yoweri Museveni's government has over the years been criticized by the opposition, the human rights activists, and Western countries for various rights violations, including torture, illegal detentions, and extrajudicial killings of opponents and critics. And he's saying, even with all that, hey, we have addressed this, and officials have denied almost all the accusations and said all security forces implicated in rights abuses have been duly punished. But in some instances, there's not really any factual evidence to support this claim by the government. And, Uganda is gearing up for its elections, I think, which should be happening in 2026. So I don't know if this is just setting ground. I don't want to speculate, but I'd rather find the move to close such a very important office quite suspicious, And the OHCHR office in Uganda was established in 2006 and was initially allowed to focus on human rights abuses during that time that there was a conflict in north and northeast parts of Uganda. And that is according to Uganda's government. That was the initial agreement, and then they were allowed to extend their scope of work to the rest of Uganda. But I guess they've been doing too much. They've been exposing too much. They've been what perhaps the president will consider meddling too much and all these human rights and all this, So the government is saying, we have this, we know we got this, and we're doing well, and we've worked on our own local mechanisms to address the issues of human rights. in the country. So in the letter, the ministry said the government has since gained enough commitment for the promotion and protection of human rights, and there was peace throughout the country, coupled with strong peace throughout the country. I think that is there. In Uganda is largely peaceful, coupled with strong national. Okay, this strong, because they specifically use that word, coupled with strong national human rights institutions and a very vibrant civil society. What? Yeah, I must be reporting the wrong things here, because that is not what I report when I'm reporting about civil society in Uganda and human rights institution and strong human rights institution. That it's good to know that Uganda has some of this. Now, Uganda's next election is in 2026, like I've said, and Museveni is widely expected to run. Although his son has also shown, sorry, I just had my lunch. This son has shown some eagerness to want to replace his dad, and I think at some point he said he really wants to make his mother proud. I guess the father has not made the mother proud enough, so now the son has to come in and continue with the making the family proud, I suppose. So he's really, from his sentiments, he's really seeking to take over after his dad. So this is quite something. Strong national human rights institutions in Uganda, and then vibrant civil society. If we were describing Kenya, then this is true, all right? Strong national human rights institutions, yeah, I think we really are trying our best here. A vibrant civil society, this is like their headquarters here in Nairobi. Even those operating in East Africa and the rest here, because we have, as a country, we fought and we've gained that space, so we are able to have things like this. And things like this are very important. Institutions like this are very important because they act as checks and balances to the government. So if you were describing Kenya, then this would apply. But Uganda, having strong national human rights institutions, point me one, because I really would like to have a talk with them, and a vibrant civil society. I'd like to have a conversation with one of them. So if this was the case, then they will not even want to close down the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Why would they want to close down if they had nothing to worry about? They will just let this office do its job. So I think for me, this raises a lot of questions, especially knowing that the country in the next few years is going to its elections in 2026. And what would this possibly mean? We looked at the other elections that happened in 2000 and was it in 20? We saw how that played out, 2020 in February, and a lot of things happened, and a lot of human rights abuses were reported, especially allegedly against the oppositions and things like that. So I guess those human rights institutions, those strong ones, they were not there yet. So maybe they are there now. So maybe next time they'll do better. But anyway, I just found that to be quite interesting. Okay, because my time is really running out. The Gambia court needs, okay, don't even worry about that. I'll look at that tomorrow, because that's a long story that, I may not have all the details to. So this simmering tensions between Rwanda and DRC continues to go up. And now the media regulator in the DRC is saying that has ordered all local office of satellite television provider Canal Plus to remove all Rwandan channels on their platform, so that Congolese are not able to access any Rwandese channels from there. I think this conflict is really taking a different turn. And as I was reading through the stories from the DRC, you'll find that the report from yesterday, I was telling you there was a protest against the East African forces and the United Nations forces there. And in the protest yesterday, 3 protesters were killed because they were literally attacking. There are a few instances when these peacekeeping missions are allowed to use force when they feel their lives are endangered. So I think this was the case. So MONUSCO said it deplored the deaths during the attack in Munigi. So these protesters were literally attacking these soldiers. So in the process of dispersing them, I don't know if using the live ammunition was really necessary, but it is allowed. The UN, those are very few instances the peacekeeping mission are allowed to use live ammunition, and one of them is when they feel their lives is at risk and they have to do something to protect themselves in self-defense. Okay, so that was the case. So the victims died while peacekeepers accompanied by Congolese soldiers tried to protect the convoy. That is according to the statement. So I think this will only whip up emotions of the people that already are disenfranchised. And yesterday when I was having this conversation, I said, well, I understand the frustrations from the Congolese because they've been seeing these forces there, and they feel like the presence of these forces is not adding anything, is not making any difference because the attacks continue and things like that. But I also was suspicious, and maybe it's just my journalistic mind. My next question was, who is really sponsoring this discontent and this kind of protest? Because usually there's somebody there in the mix who's trying to just sponsor some of these things. But I can understand why they, if at all it was out of their own volition, why they felt it was necessary for them to protest. But in the process, they were very aggressive, and they were, fighting and throwing stones and all that to these peacekeeping missions. They were the UN, the MONUSCO, together with the East African forces, and in the process 3 protesters were killed. So this has only added, I think, petrol to the already bad fire. So this will only make their situation there and them being there only unbearable, because now you have a community that is mourning. You've killed their people, and you're here to make to bring peace. This is very hard. This is very hard, and every day this conflict continues to be very, very complicated, and there's no telling. It's like every day there's just something else that adds up to already a very bad situation. So, and now DRC has suspended Rwanda's channel in its country, so I guess now it's just getting to levels that I don't know, either it will get to a level where these 2 countries will just decide to go to an all-out war, because for right now it's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's like all the agreements that had been made so far, all the talks, all the mediation talks, and all the progress that we thought is being made as far as this conflict is concerned, is like everything has, cold water has been poured in all the progress. So we keep going back to the drawing board. And I don't know, when you get to the drawing board, how do you even start? From what point do you start? Because it is a layer of things and issues and history and things that needs to be undone and redone and all that. So it is a lot of work. So this is just a process, and we were hoping that the first part of it, which was to silence the guns, maybe that will be a good start to now start engaging and addressing other issues. But every time there's something new, there is something new that is just making the situation difficult. So it's just there's just too much. It's just too much going on. So let's see. Probably tomorrow I'll come back here with better news about this situation. I hope, God willing. But right now it doesn't look too good. So, and the Nigeria's Naira crisis, this money thing, I'll not talk about it right now. But we'll have a full conversation about it in the morning, in my morning show, God willing. If we are able to get there alive, we don't have our lives in our hands. So if he wills, we will get to tomorrow. And then I'll come, because I think there's something that is going on. So I'll go do a bit of some research and find out what is going on with these new notes. And what is the politics has to do with the banks now, and what is really going on. It's just a few days towards the elections there in Nigeria. So let's have this conversation hopefully tomorrow in the morning. But for right now, I want to leave it here, and I want to thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.